Good morning. Welcome to the ChinWag. I'm Richard Vobes. Lovely to be here again. I'm feeling a hell of a lot better, which is fantastic news, and hopefully I should be a little bit more, what's the word I want to use? Effervescent, maybe? When you've got a cold and you're ill and you're feeling a bit rough, and you just sort of carry on, it's all very well. But when you're sort of on screen doing that, you really have to make that extra bit of effort. You can't very easily get away with sitting there going, do you know what, I just feel absolutely miserable as sin and sit here and talk to you. You may feel that, but you've got to try, and I do try, but hopefully, as I say, as the health has returned to the old Vobes, he's back here again, being able to chinwag with you to your delight, well, to your delight, to my delight, presumably. Some people, I noticed somebody, can't see the comment now because it was there, but it was Bye Bye Vobe Show. What was it? If only I could find it. Here we go. Anita Turvey. I don't know what you mean by this. I kind of got an idea what you mean. It's like flouncing off. People are very odd, aren't they? They flounce away. So long, Vobe Show. Maybe it's a show for dinosaurs, cold-blooded creatures with a discard for humanity. I don't know quite where you work that out. But, you know, you're entitled to your view. And it's nice to have met you. Not that I've met you, but nice to have known you. Or not that I've even known you, but nice of you to watch. I assume you did. And arrivederci goodbye. Bye, Felicia, as they say. Anyway, in today's show, I wasn't really sure what to talk about, but we've got workers out the back. And at the end of last week, when I was feeling a bit rough, they were digging a hole, which was very handy, you know, lots of loud digging noise. I was laid up in bed, trying to sort of get rid of this nausea and, sunstroke and the hot feverish thing that came along with that. And I'm lying there, and they're drilling into the road with a pneumatic drill, and then they're using some rotary thing to cut the tarmac. And then later on, up came this vehicle that had to reverse up the lane at the back of my terraced house, going beep, 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 beep. And I was in such a weird place with my dreams coming in and sort of semi-conscious state. I thought for a moment that I was in A&E, in the emergency room, all tied up to a heart monitor with this beep, beep, beep. Then I realised, oh no, this is some digger they're bringing in, and then they were digging and all of this. Anyway, all that went on, and I'd made them, when they first arrived, I saw them and I was inquiring what they were doing in the lane, and they said, we're from Southern Water, we're going to dig up this, that and the other. And I said, that's, yeah, great. It's nothing to do with my property needed. It was a property that they're turning into two. So it's a terraced house that's going to be flats, two flats, one upstairs, one downstairs, so that the owner can obviously maximize. And in these days, that's what people are always trying to do, isn't it? Maximize the profit. And so they need to add, I don't know why, I guess they needed a separate lane on a separate water main on a separate meter. I guess that's what it's all about. So they were laying in, because there was water there before, because it was a shop, and then there was a little sort of homestead above it. But I guess it's all got to be separated. Anyway, I don't know why they're digging in this mains, but they are. So, and then it joins the mains, the big mains, somewhere else. So fair enough, okay, that's what they've got to do, and it doesn't affect me other than the fact that I had to move the van out the way where I park. But I'm a polite sort of person. You may not think that, judging from all this nonsense that I put out here. You may think that I'm a horrible, arrogant tosser, and you're very welcome to your views. But I said to them, look, you're working, it's very hot, would you like a cup of tea? And they said, that's very kind. So I made them a cup of tea. And then this morning, they're back again to finish off. And they bought this dirty great wagon with a whole load of hardcore in the back, which to infill. And so I knew I needed to get my van out of the way, because they were working right, within inches of the van. They'd parked up. So I said, look, I've got to nip out later. Any chance I could just shunt my van round there? And they went, yeah, I suppose so. And Julia stayed over last night, so her car was further up, so she needed to get out as well. And of course, they had to respect that people may be off to work themselves at different times of the day. Anyway, I made them a nice cup of tea, just now, and they were very thankful, and they're probably slurping it as we speak, and that's nice. And I think when, even though they're not working for me, they're just working in the vicinity, and you could see that they were. I mean, they probably brought flasks or whatever, or go to the cafe at Morrison's, which is near me. In the cafe, I just said that. Don't need to repeat it. But I just thought it's neighbourly. It's a nice thing to do, to just go out and say, well, look, I can see you're working out there. I've got a kitchen. It's not going to any skin off my nose. Would you like a cup of tea? Yes, please. Can we have 2 sugars? Yes, of course. Luckily, I've got sugar. I said, but I haven't got any biscuits. Oh, that's all right. And so on. So I think it's very nice to just go out and be neighbourly and make people a cup of tea and just. Not that there was any tensions. I was going to say ease the tensions. There wasn't any tensions, but just smooth things over, because that way you've got, I don't know, you've got that sort of access. Oh, hello there. You've got a conversation. You can find out what they're doing. But if you needed to say, look, I'm ever so sorry, I've got to do some recording in a minute. Can I just have 10 minutes of silence whilst I'm doing some recording, whilst they're compacting the ground and all that kind of malarkey? So sometimes just being very, taking the initial step is a good thing. And I think it's neighbourly, but I think it's manners, isn't it? And I think it's politeness, and I think it's being English. Now, I don't know whether other nationalities do that around the world. If you're sitting there in an American house in America, where would you else be sitting in an American house? But, if say you're an American, for example, or a French person, or a Spanish person, or from some other nationality, is this, I think, making people a cup of tea is a very English thing, but is it? Is it? It may be. Is that what you would do, or would you go, no, that's none of our business, I'm not going to interfere, not going to get involved? Are you a bit standoffish like that? Or do you think nosing into people and saying, oh, I can see you're doing a bit of road works here, would you like a cup of tea? Go on, I'm going to put the kettle on. I think it's all old-fashioned, good quality manners and being nice and neighbourly, and I think that's important. What do you think? Be interested in your views on that. So neighbourly, being neighbourly and having good manners, being polite and all of that, is that something that you still hold to? Do people do that to you? You see these things, if somebody sort of collapses in the street and they say, give him air, and then somebody says, well, I'll go and put the kettle on. Putting the kettle on, having a cup of tea, it just sort of eases life, doesn't it? It's something we English have been doing for years, but I'm interested in if other nationalities or other cultures do that. Perhaps they'd say, no, we'd bring out a bottle of wine, or here, have a bottle of beer. Perhaps if you're an American, you say, hey, would you like a Budweiser, or other beers are available, of course. So maybe a cup of tea is just the quintessential English thing to do, but maybe it's something else. Anyway, I'd be interested in your thoughts on that. Let's have a look at the comments in today, because quite a few interesting comments. I want to get through some of these at the beginning of the week. Spiny Norman says, John, this is... hang on a minute, I need to work out how to display this a little bit better. What's the point of ambition? Oh, yeah, here we go. So... Spiny Norman says, John Major's recession ultimately destroyed my post-degree career ambitions. I always say I've worked my way down the career ladder, and now my job might be virtuous, but it is low paid and, for me, unfulfilling, because it doesn't challenge me enough, although I am good at it. I tried to become an ambulance technician at one point 3 times, but on each interview got less far in the process each time I applied. I found this so distressing that I stopped. You could let failure destroy you, but I have other things in life that are valuable. I do live in a reasonably idyllic village, surrounded, on the whole, by rich people, and have that little house that you've talked about, that I am so grateful for what I have. When you see the hand that's been dealt to some people in life, i.e. the gross disabilities, I am so grateful for the positives in my life. I really concur with your narrative, Richard, and see so many parallels in our thinking. And this is the thing. It's interesting, as you say, I think sometimes ambition can be a good thing and a bad thing, can't it? Because you can go chasing after that thing that you've really, really always wanted, and then suddenly find that you no longer want that, that what you had was more idyllic to begin with. I mean, I'm in a very secure-ish situation. I've paid for my house. I used to do a lot of corporate video making and entertaining, and over the years I've got to that point where you take on a mortgage for 20 years and 20 years comes to the end, and lo, you have actually paid for it. But I've never moved. We've never grown anything. The house was a do-it-upper when I bought it. It's still a do-it-upper now. So I haven't lived in the lap of luxury, and I've never had fast cars or anything like that. The only thing that I have now that I can say is really a lovely thing is my transit van, which I bought not new, but it was new to me, but it was very expensive, and that was thanks to some inheritance that came down from my father. And I'm very, very lucky, and I'm very, privileged to be able to have that. But should you curtail your ambition just because you've reached a certain bit, or should you go on? Or are there extremes of it where it's like, well, okay, you've done a lot, mate. Let somebody else have a space. It's difficult to tell. Giles Whitehead Diarist says, I spent 30 years trying to break through as an artist. It's not easy, but one tries to live in hope and stay positive. Some months make that very hard, but then other times things start to look up. It's all very up and down. From early on, I found that culturally, artists don't get a lot of respect. When putting down artists on my car insurance and wondering why the quote was astronomical, a friend said, why the hell did you do that? You may as well have put drunken idiot. There are lots of people who just try to take advantage of people's desperation to succeed and will happily take your money to tell you how to succeed as a creative. I wish it was that simple. Many people also seem to expect artists to work for free in return for exposure. Oh yes, I know all about that. It's a fascinating thing. Yes, I could understand why, if you put artists down on your car insurance, that would the thing is, I won't get into that publicly, but you just have to be a little bit more creative and truthful, but creative. That's what I would say on that side. Many people also seem to expect artists, yes, read that, blah, blah, blah. Does one just keep going and hope everything will pay off in the end, or does one become angry, bitter, and twisted? Whatever happens, you've got to have a sense of humour. It's the thing. Here's the thing about artists. I don't like to call myself an artist because I don't draw really. I draw a little bit, but not very well. And I wouldn't really call this an art. I don't know whether you call this a craft or a skill, or what you would call the sort of things I do, or video editing, or making videos on YouTube and things like that. I don't really know how you would class that. Content creator is such a sort of empty expression. It means nothing. And it gives you no... it's not very ambitious, is it? I want to be a content creator. It's like, right. Whereas filmmaker just has a little bit of a nicer ring to it, although I'm sure that most people will go, oh yes, you're filmmaker, it's like artists, you're just up your bum, aren't you? You're all very into your thing. Now, absolutely, I understand. One thing I think about being a creative type of person is if you succeed too quickly, you've got nowhere to go. Whereas if you spend your life slowly crawling up the ladder, all the time there is the step beyond that you can go to, which gives you some hope, which gives you some drive, I think. And I think that is good. Sometimes also it is actually quite humbling to not be extremely poor, but not to be very rich. because when you get a good job or something happens and you make a little bit of money from it, it still gives you that buzz and the reason for doing things. You go, oh, look at me. I only expected to do this well, and this has gone this well. And how marvellous is that? And it gives you a bit of a buzz. And also, all the time you're hungry, you work harder. That's how I view it. But it can be a bugger because you'll look at the next person and you'll think, oh, yes, you're driving an Audi TT and you've got a great big mansion of a house, or you've got a BMW, or you've got a yacht, or whatever it is, and you've got it made. But then they're not necessarily any happier, are they, snorting their cocaine and dealing with lots of different personal affairs. So I don't know. I think I'd much rather be grounded, more earthbound, than in a world of commercialism. That's just my opinion. I'd be interested in your thoughts on that. Shirley Lynch says, I just got leaving... this is about when I was talking about the CSEs, the Certificate of Education. I got a leaving certificate when I left school. No O-levels or hires unless you wanted to stay on at school. I don't know what a hire is. Is that a form of qualification? So none of those unless you wanted to stay on at school to sit for them. I wanted to leave at 15 years. Yes, I wanted to leave school at 15 years. My ambition was to work in a famous Edinburgh store, Jenner's, and I was there for 27 years. My shop, Jenner's, has gone now. I have my memories. Thank you again for a great ChinWag. And that's lovely, isn't it? To be able to realise your ambition. There's... just trying to remember the name of the author now. I read a book about a make-believe Jenner's type of big department store like your Selfridges. Hilarious book written in the 50s. You've just reminded me of it, and the sort of the departments and the politics that went on from the departments, and in the 1950s also very English, and how you would have the what would you call the people at the front of the door opening the door for the rich and what have you, and trying to dissuade the poorer people from coming into the store. All of this sort of stuff was going on. Hilarious. Anyway. You just reminded me of the book, but I can't bring it to mind. I'll have to try and find it on my shelf. Jo, a gaming girly. Hello, Jo. She says, enjoying the ChinWag. Schools, I feel, don't support ambitions. I have ambitions. Many ideas need to be rich and all that. Yes, I know what you mean. It seems more now that you need money in order to do these ambitions. In the past, I don't know what it was, there was that sense. I remember reading a number of the old self-help books back in the day, and there was this sort of feeling that if you work hard, you will be rewarded. Work hard, someone will notice you, and you will go up the echelons of power. I don't think that happens anymore. I think in the old days, there used to be getting in at the ground and working your way up was a good thing. Now people go to some form of education, university or whatever, and get floated in the positions instead of knowing a business from the ground up, whether it's an industry or an individual business. Knowing from on the shop floor what it's like, so that when you get closer to the top, you can still appreciate and understand what the people go through who work. But now people come in, sort of, they get posted in higher up, and they have no idea of this bit. I wanted to be an actor, and I thought doing extra work would be the best way in, because you would, and to be honest with you, it's given me a huge amount of experience. I've absolutely loved it. You would turn up, and I was astounded that the other people, many of them, were not actors, that they would just be all sorts of different professions who were doing a bit of extra work, which really peeved me, because I thought this was where actors would learn their craft. It was like the modern day version of vaudeville, that you would go or not vaudeville. What was the touring rep? It was sort of a bit like the modern version of rep. That as an extra, you would all be actors. You would all understand what you're all being there for. Yes, you're just a basically moving wallpaper in a scene. You're walking across. I mean, I was in The Bill, the old TV series Thames Television, The Bill. You probably recognise me. I was the flash of white shirt behind frosted glass at the end of the corridor. That was one of my claims to fame. Yeah, but excuse me. However, having said that, I learnt about lights, how studios and different sets were lit. I would overhear conversations with the lighting cameraman and the cameraman and the director, and how they were going to do certain scenes. And I learnt so much because I was fascinated on not only how the acting was done, but also how the production was done. And getting in at the ground floor taught me a hell of a lot. It also taught me about how people were treated and how mistreated as well. And so that if ever I became a director of a production, I would be aware of those people beneath me, instead of having been flown in at some point here and only being aware of this station and not everybody below me. So I know exactly what you mean, Joe. She says, I've managed to do some things I've wanted to, making videos and getting back into arts and crafts, but getting my own home with my partner seems unreachable. We will be renting forever. We both work really hard and full time. I'm not really attached to my mobile. And a lot of the times I just leave it at home. I love to see what's around me. You could easily miss out so much with your head in the mobile phone all the time. She goes on quite a bit, but yes, and I do feel my children. Well, actually, I was just going to say they're in the same boat as you, but they're not. My son Billy has finally got onto the property ladder, so he now owns. Well, he's paying a mortgage, put it like that, and my eldest son is. My daughter Georgie, she's out in New Zealand renting. She did have property, and she bought, and then she sold, and she went off to New Zealand. And I hope she's okay, because they're a bit weird out there at the moment with that Jacinda Ahern, weird woman. Anyway, let's move on. Sean Ginley says cues. I'm not quite sure what cues means, but he says, 1, did he say Vobes, not Richard? They certainly did at my school. So here we go. Yes, did they call you by your surname? Is that what you mean? Probably. 2, although it was 1970s comprehensive school, I think things were changing back then, so I think they did call us by our first names. Things had eased on. It was no longer by surname back in those days, apart from when they were reading the register. 2, a Rolodex. No, wasn't a Rolodex. It was a box index. Not the Rolodex. It was a box index. He's talking about the time when my careers teacher, the science teacher, became a careers teacher. And 3, didn't you ever think to join a local operatic society or play company? You'd have to know plays or operas and study the directions to join as a director. Yes, I was a member of Horsham Young Players when I was about, I'm just trying to think, 13 in actual fact, Sean. And I did some sound effects, live sound effects. I seem to remember we were doing Wind in the Willows when I joined, and I was there holding the thunder sheet, creating thunder and things like that. And I escalated my way up there to become one of the lead performers at Horsham Young Players back in the day. We did a play called Dandelion Time, of all things, I seem to remember, and I can't remember whether I played Old Father time, or one of the lead Hickory Dock. I played. I seem to remember something like that. Golly, I've got all the press cuttings, and yes, I excelled at that. And then I started writing plays, and we put them on. We went out and we did competitions. I did all sorts of stuff. And yes, I went to Lodge Hill and studied under George Rawlings at the time. So yes, it was nothing. The actual acting at school was rubbish, but I did all my acting elsewhere. So so I don't know quite why you're saying all of this. You'd have had to read screenplays and studied acting in order to direct people. I was in an operatic society. Well, we didn't have an operatic society, and I can't sing. In fact, when I was at school, they put me off singing because we were singing. We had a music lesson. I seem to remember that the music lesson would go along, and various people would sing, and then the teacher came up to me and he said, just mime, Richard, just mime, because clearly I couldn't sing a note, and it was very off-putting for everybody. So yes, Sean, I'm sorry to say, you may have misjudged me there. I've done a lot more than you think. Ingram Carr says, my ambition from a very young age was to do what I do today. Living the dream, as they say, and I love it. Fortunately, I have my own business too, which is a hobby rather than a job. However, thought you might be interested to hear an anecdote from a retired car trader I know from my hometown of Seaford in East Sussex, who explained that during the 60s and 70s, selling cars was very different. He told me that during the 70s he bought a job lot of 3 Ford Cortinas from an auction, ex-company cars. After cleaning and putting them on his forecourt for sale, he promptly sold all 3 that weekend. With the proceeds, he said with a smile and a twinkle in his eye, I went and bought a house. How times have changed. Very much enjoy your daily ChinWag. It's reassuring to know my thoughts are shared. It's amazing, isn't it, that back in those days, the profit then must have been extremely high. I guess these days the profit on nice cars is not as high as one imagines. Andrew Bradbury says, brilliant video, Richard. I agree with everything you've said. I was stuck on the family business till I was 40 with no say about any decisions at all, mainly voluntary work. After eventually going on my own way, it was extremely hard work as I had no real savings, couldn't get a mortgage. I saved up to buy cash and then moved from house to house doing them up. Not for the fainted-hearted person. Eventually, at 60, I owned a nice property and my ambition came true. Eventually. Never been left any money. Feel like taking it easy now. The country's gone to pot forever. I stay away from nightlife. No one interesting to talk to. No, I don't think people got conversation if they go out for nightlife, have they? Thanks. I hope you recover quickly. Very kind of you. Thank you very much. Andrew. Paul Cockrell says, I think with GCSEs, there are more grades, so it's impossible to fail. Well, they seem to make them easier and easier each year, if I believe what you hear. I'm not sure hang on, why can't I say it? GCSEs, there we go, are in existence now. They may have changed it to something else. It is possible, yeah. William Burgess says, I enjoyed today. Thank you very much. And Carl Chapman says, my comment meant to say, look up north, as in north of England and also Wales. I'm in East Yorkshire. Yes, so look for property up north. Probably very true. We'll just do a couple more and then I'll let you go. Thank you very much for all the encouragement, by the way. Louise Large, I don't know how you pronounce your surname, Louise. I'm very rubbish at people's names. Is it Lage or Large or something? Anyway, she says, hello, Richard. Ambition is not a waste of time. I don't think it actually is a waste of time. I think it is good to have an ambition, but I think sometimes it can feel like that because you can... I don't know if you can hear that. They're now chopping something in the road. I think it's very easy to feel as if it's all a waste of time because in the old days it felt like you had a chance. These days I think it's like you are fighting a huge animal to get anywhere. I don't know. Anyway, but ambition, I don't know if you can hear that. It's some sort of angle grinder going, which is very... I need a studio. You see, this is why I need to be out in the countryside in the middle of nowhere where there's no distractions whatsoever. Anyway, so let's get back to this because I'm wasting your time otherwise. Ambition is not a waste of time, she says, but ambition without some small plan is wasting energy. I've seen so many people in midlife change tack with very little money and finally do what they want. All it takes is change in attitude and envisaging and planning for what you want. You are a worthy man from Worthing, who is very capable of change. Let's face reality, no one's going to gift you property or suddenly send you £350,000. You say that, but you never quite know. My dear aunt used to say, start small, have a plan, have 2 contingency plans, and get out of your comfort zone once in a while. And she was very well known as a small business owner her entire life. Sometimes one needs perhaps to take a temp job to earn a bit of cash and look beyond one's prejudice to shift the old ways of thinking. Anyway, she goes on quite a bit there. Yes, you're probably actually very right. I think it becomes easier as you get older because if you've got children and you've got dependents, then that's a big part of your life that you've got to sort of deal with before you can change. And things, I think it can look like people just have luck at different parts in their life, but I think things have just been slowly in the background slotting in. And then when it happens, it can look like it's, wow, that just happened overnight. But it's probably not as simple as all of that. So who knows? As it was, says, I was managing a cine specialist shop in Burlington Arcade in London in 1979. Shame you didn't pop in. I'd have done you a deal. Yes, 1979 was a long time ago. And I was after, I can't remember, I was after a Super 8. I used to work in, I used to use Super 8, Standard 8, Single 8, and 16mm. So I've done quite a bit with the old-fashioned stuff and used to develop my own 35mm stills. In fact, I used to do that when I left school for my employer, when I was employee. Well, I was the employee. I did so much, my ambition was to do that for the rest of my working life, which I did until I retired a couple of years ago. I know you're not a fan of renting, but you could achieve your dream if you did. Yes, the thing about renting is you've got to get the money from somewhere. And then there's, to me, the whole thing about renting is that someone can kick you out. Whereas if you own your own property, they can't, as long as you can pay for it. And I think once you've, I mean, I'm very, very lucky that I own the property I'm in. So I don't have to rent anything. And the thought of having to cough up whatever the rent of places is you've obviously got a lot of money coming in if you've continually got money coming in and you've been very successful. But if you've been like me as an entertainer most of your life, actually you spent most of your life just keeping your head above the water, paying off all the bills, not, as I said before, driving flash cars and having... I don't have new furniture in my house. I don't have barely any furniture in my house. Anybody who's been in my house or you've seen my videos in my house, it's not like an ordinary person's house. It's everything is second-hand, old and knackered. The walls are falling to bits. The roof does actually leak. The windows are in desperate need of replacement. But I don't mind all that. I love my house. It's lovely. But I have never achieved that level of success that a number of people, but I have managed to pay all the bills. And that's, to me, was the most important thing. Pay all the bills. I would now never rent because the thought of, oh, I can't afford this month's rent and then be thrown out onto the street would fill me at my age with abhorrence. So I think it might work for some people, and of course if you're stuck in there, like Joe was saying, we're stuck having to rent, we have to work hard, and I feel really, really sorry for people like that. And I just think the world has... I wanted to stop, but I'll just say this one thing. We're not, as a society, I think we are not helping one another at all. Here we are in the 21st century, and yet we're all in this extreme version of capitalism where we're desperately trying to take as much money from everybody else to pay ourselves. And I think and I'm not a socialist by any means, socialism doesn't work. But I think there's an extreme version of capitalism that we've swung into, and this will be a subject perhaps for another debate, another conversation. But I don't think that we are running society quite right, because when you look around at how people are suffering, i.e. they're like Joe, working so hard just to stand still, I start to think, when you look back in history, being a serf seemed to have been, you had a house, you had an acre of ground, you had a cow, life might have been extremely hard, and you only had to work a little bit on the master's domain, and do some work for him and work for the general community. I don't know that this modern world has actually brought us any happier situation than perhaps 1,000 years ago, when life was a lot more simpler, and death was more prevalent, and starvation, and we were at the elements. I get all of that, but I'm not talking about those things. I'm just wondering that our modern world that we're in, where we're supposedly intelligent people, collectively we're supposed to be a sophisticated society. But if I was a Martian coming in and thinking, why is the society letting so many people down? That's what I would be thinking. Interested in your comments. Manners, politeness, making people cups of tea, that sort of thing. Interested to hear. I've kept you going yet again far too long, and the noises have started off. I will catch up with you hopefully tomorrow. Take care, and thanks for listening.